Leo, now we are live. And man, I feel like I should have just kicked this off when you first jumped on because we've already had like 10 minutes of amazing discussion. But how's it going, man?
Chris, thank you so much for having me, man. Like I was telling you off camera, when my team brought this to me, they were like, "Would you be up for this?" I was like, 100%. I read the story, the goal behind Books for Guys, and it couldn't be more up my alley. So I'm excited to be here.
Man, well, we're excited to have you. And well, man, let's talk wealth, let's talk finance, let's talk real estate, man. How did you? I mean, t- tell your story. I've learned a little bit about you, but what got you into the space and so passionate about what you've been building over really the last 2 decades?
Yeah. So, like I always tell my friends and those that are obviously interested in hearing my story is like, I kind of tripped into this industry, right? Nobody wakes up on a Saturday morning and says, I'm going to go and finance homes, right? And that's what we do. Like our company, lends people money to finance homes. But one of my friends, like, introduced me to the finance, real estate, mortgage world, and he's like, "I think you'd do great at it." And just like everyone else, right? Like I always say, to people, like I've been doing this for quite some time, but it really wasn't until 2008 that things became very serious for me, right? And so, in books absolutely played a massive role in this. To kind of make a very long story short, started in 2003. Started to climb in this industry, but I would argue most people did that were in here, right? Like, and most people that were exposed to the mortgage industry, had some sort of like success. But then the liquidity crisis happened in 2007 and 8, and everything changed. I remember walking into my boss's office and saying, "Hey," his name was Nathan. I was like, "Hey, Nathan, I for whatever reason I can't get a hold of this rep for this bank, and we're closing on this transaction like in a couple of hours." He's like, "The bank closed. That bank is gone. You're gonna have to
Yeah.
find somewhere else to do
Are
this."
you watching the news?
Yeah, exactly. Are you living under a rock right now? Uh, and it was definitely a scary time. It was definitely a hard time. But like I always tell my kids, right? I always tell them a few things, but probably the top two things that I always share with them is this. I say, number one, the most expensive piece of real estate in the entire universe is here, is in your brain. Who you let in there, right? Don't let anyone live rent free up there, right? That's number one. And then number two, I tell them that we can do hard things, right? Yes, this industry, life is generous, hard, but Anzoleagas can do hard things. And so that motto, I would argue, began around 2007 and 8, right? Because as Mike Tyson would say, right, like everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, the industry as a whole got punched in
Got
the
punched in the
face,
face.
right? And we needed a blueprint, right? And that began an incredible journey for me that allowed me to step by step, maybe one step forward, two steps back, three steps forward, two steps back, allowed me to get to where I am today.
Yeah. Man, that's incredible. Yeah, and I remember, I mean, people still there's still a little bit of fear, I think, when it comes to buying a house and owning a home. Even though everyone wants to, if you experienced any sort of, I don't know, if you had an experience with 2008, 2007, and that crisis, me, I saw it through my parents when they were thinking about selling a house. Thankfully, we didn't because if we would have bought a bigger house, we probably would have been one of those ones that lost it,
Yeah.
and so again, I saw friends go through and families go through it. It's still something, even myself, as I, look at in the near future buying a home. There's a lot of things that you think about now, and a lot of people go through. And that's something different about you. It seems though, is that you're not just lending money for homes, but you're coaching people on, how to go about getting a mortgage. Can you get a mortgage in this situation? What are and you talk about wealth building and the reasoning behind owning a home and stuff like that. So I mean, you've gone way past just the normal career that a lot of people work. You have a passion for this. Um, Talk about that a little bit, because I mean, you've even had a couple Forbes articles, published now, and I mean, you're deep into this. Where did that passion come from? And what do you do, I guess, with some of your coaching and teaching people about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, one of my mentors, his name is Lon, and he always said that the most important thing, the most important question in any type of complex scenario is so what? Like, who cares? Like that, all of this stuff. Like, how does that apply to me? And if I were to boil it down to my entire career and trajectory, really boils down to answering that question. How to, right? Like, how do I grow a business? How do I scale a business? How do I execute on a very high level? How do I lead better? How do I help you purchase a house? So, how do we navigate some of the question marks regarding, investing in real estate? How do we downsize? So at the end of the day, everybody is not just looking for, for a solution. They're looking for guidance, right? And so, um, after the 2007 and 8 crisis, that was a big aha, right? Like one of my boss, we'll call him Nathan because that's his name, so we'll just call him that. So Nathan essentially was like, I literally went up to him and I said to him, I was like, how do you know so much about the industry? How do you know so much about mortgages? I mean, I thought that, the industry worked this way, but it actually works this way. And he literally said, "Oh, that's pretty easy." He's like, "Go follow this guy." His name is Todd Duncan. Read his book. There's a book called High Trust Selling. And read that. Implement that, and you should be on your way. Go find this other guy. His name is Barry Habib. At the time, it was Mortgage Market Guide. Now it's MBS Highway. And this other gentleman by the name of Tim Brahim, and this tool that they had called Loan Toolbox. Right. So I'm like, okay, that's all I needed. Right. Like I just needed you to point me in the right direction for me to digest. And I think this is where a lot of miss, whether it's in your personal life or even business, you got to execute, right? Like you have the information, now you got to go consume it, and then you got to execute. That's where the secret is. And so I started to execute, I started to grow this thing, I started to build it, and little by little, clients started coming. Clients started to obviously approach us. And we apply the same principle with them. Right? Everybody looking at real estate, they don't just want to buy a house. They don't want to just, get in debt. They want to actually have a home. But there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions around the concept of how. And how do you answer those questions? Well, one, you can try to immerse yourself, in your thoughts, right? And the things that are thinking about, or you can just go pick up the blueprint, right? Everything changed, everything kind of unlocked for me in life earlier on, probably like 2009 or so, when I started working with a coaching service. Buffini and Company is the name of the company. And I would go there to these conferences, et cetera. And the guy is phenomenal. He's become probably one of the biggest mentors in all of real estate. And it dawned on me, I'm like, holy smokes. I remember driving into the office and thinking, this guy is reading books, like literally implementing it himself, and then charging people $400 a month to teach them how to implement what this book is reading. I'm like, this is super easy. Let me just dive in myself and
Yeah.
just implement my own. So that's how I've done it brick by brick, whether it's in our business or whether it's obviously in serving our clientele.
Yeah. That's awesome. You had me thinking as you were talking about, like, implementing, doing the work. I saw a post from Alex Hormozy, I follow him, big guy, and he was talking about how, like, it's easier to pivot from a bad decision than no decision being made at all, and it's basically like saying, like, "Hey, man, sometimes you just gotta make a decision, go with it. If it's doesn't work out, just go to the next one, but do something to get the ball rolling." A lot of people sit on information and they think, "Oh, should I do this or do that?" But you seem to have the right mindset of when work needs to be done. Now that you've got the information you need, or even just a nugget of information you might need, you're like, "Dude, let's go, let's run. We'll figure it out on the way. Brick wall, we'll break it down. Whatever. We'll build this thing how we want to." But it always seems like the most successful people take that approach. They're not scared of what's happened in the market. They're not thinking negatively. It's like, okay, well, let me figure out how to pivot or figure out I mean, because you went through another thing too. We could talk about COVID year, real estate going way down, then way up again. And so you've seen a few cycles in this, but it doesn't seem to phase you. You're like, I'll just figure it out and we'll build and pivot where we need to.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about that? I'm 42 now, but one of the things that I've learned, like, I mean, literally failing forward here, right,
Hmm.
is that life really is a lot of sequence, right? There's a lot of sequences in this life, and they kind of like the majority of the sequence kind of translate into every aspect of our world. Let me give you an example, right? Like in business, okay? One of the frustrating things at the very beginning of my career was like, dang, like there's no real sequence. If you really think about some of the most successful people that are out there, you will notice that they're like, well, how did you get started? They're like, well, I bumped into this one guy and then he told me to go read this book. And then I followed this guy and then I bought his stuff. And then I found this other guy, right? No sequence. And so over the years, I'm like, man, there's got to be a sequence. There's got to be a sequence that we follow. And here's kind of the sequence that I've learned. Okay. So it really boils down to a few of these. Number one is, how do I start? Okay. Like, okay, how do you start? Like, you have a big dream, you have an aspiration, whether it's buying a house, starting a business. Okay. How do I start this? What's the first step? Okay. Like, it might be, okay, the first step in buying a house might be to contact a mortgage professional that you trust. Okay. Or maybe contact one of your friends and say, hey, who helped you purchase a property? In business, it might be, hey, how do I start? I'm thinking about running this particular idea and maybe scaling this out or doing something with this idea. Perfect. Similar to you, right? Books for Guys. It starts with an idea. They're like, well, let me see if there's even a market for this, right? The second question to that is, how do you grow this? Okay, now that you started, you're like, okay, how do you grow? Well, there has to be some organization. You have to organize at a simplest form, your database. You have to organize, the clientele. Like, you have to organize your thoughts, your value, et cetera, right? So you're growing. Now, as the business starts to grow, the third step is, how do you execute? Okay, I now know what to do. Okay, we definitely got started and we're definitely moving. But now, how do I execute on a very, very high level? And right there is where the majority of the momentum happens. In the Hormozis of the world, right? Like, I mean, all of the authors that we follow, there is definitely a pivot point here, and it's usually in the execution. So once you start to execute on a very high level, and literally execution is literally all about just repetition, doing things. What does Hormozy say? He always says, he's like, more better, right? That's his whole mentality, right? Like, we got to do more, we got to do this better. Like, that's literally it. If you hear his advice, it literally boils down to those two words, right?
Yeah.
But once you start executing, then the bigger problems start to come forward, which is, okay, number one is, now we have people that we're responsible for. How do I lead? How do I lead better? Because you clearly can't do this on your own. You have to obviously rely on other people. And then finally, the last one is, how do I scale? Like, how do I scale this entire thing so that I can serve my people better, so that I can serve my clients better, and obviously be profitable at the end of the day? And so every single business decision or every decision in life, I would argue, has a sequence, and it boils down to that how to.
Yeah. I love hearing you explain that because I'm sitting here thinking of Books for Guys. I'm thinking like, okay, I started, I've built this, I'm in the middle of executing, figuring out how to get it there. At some point, I'm gonna have to figure out how to scale even faster, stronger, more, and grow it. But as you're saying that, I'm like, this makes sense. This makes sense. Yep, I've already thought about the future. What he's saying is exactly what I'm doing here. And anyone who's building anything, you're right. That's the sequence. Start and go through that, and you should be successful. Building whatever you're doing. It may take, and some people it takes longer than others, or you may hit more roadblocks than others, but um, just keep going.
Yeah, and I think also though, like, this is where I think, like, one of the big aha moments, was with me, right? Like, okay, so clearly we understand the sequence, but Leo, like, how do we find the right direction, the right
Yeah.
resource, right?
Mhm.
And that's so easy in this day and age, right? Like, back in our grandparents' days or great grandparents' days, I mean, you have to literally go to the library and, like, go through those index things and try and read, consume a ton of like books before you found anything. But nowadays, I mean, you can literally go online and find out who the main authority is on that particular information. So a friend of mine a while ago, she said this to me. She goes, Leo, the secret of reading, it really boils down to this. He goes, if I could schedule 15 to 20 minutes with anyone in the world, who would that be? And I was like, at the time, I was like, Joe Gibbs, the Redskins slash
Yeah,
commander,
yeah.
like
Yeah,
coach, right?
yeah.
And it's like, perfect. She's like, what would you ask him? I was like, well, I would ask him, how did he learn how to adjust, in the middle of the game, given that he had a game plan and then, win all those championships with three quarterbacks, right? She goes, perfect. What kind of things would you want him to impart on you, right? And she kept asking me these questions. And she goes, now pause. She goes, that's exactly what reading is all about. He goes, you have to say to yourself, like, what do I want to learn? What are some of the issues that I'm running into? Okay, so in that sequence, okay, maybe you're in the execution piece. I'm like, what am I struggling with? holy smokes, I have this elephant, this huge dream that I want to accomplish, but I don't even know where to start. Like, who is the author on that? Okay, Brian Moran, The 12-Week Year, incredible book on execution, right? Like, and so that unlock for me is huge. And especially for the young listeners or the people that are listening to this podcast, it's like, it's not that complex. It's simply just scheduling 15 to 20 minutes, maybe per day, per week, to meet with someone, an authority figure on that one problem that you're struggling with, and then you going out there and executing.
Stack it up, learn, read, ask. Yeah. And I was going to ask you specifically on the 12-week year that you have implemented, have taken. Talk about that because I've personally never heard of it or read anything on that. But that when I was again kind of reading your story and what you use and some things that have motivated and helped you along the way, the 12-week year stood out to me. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So, uh, one of the things that we were struggling with earlier on in the business was, okay, now we're growing, but we need more, right? More, better, right? How do we do this better? How do we do more of it? We just got to execute at a much higher level. And so, when you think about execution, most people think about, you know, long, huge goals. Ryan Moran is an author, and he wrote the book The 12-Week Year, and he essentially says that, when athletes, high performing athletes train, they train in small, short bursts, right? So he talks about the concept of having a long term goal, a year goal, and then breaking down the year goal into 12 short sprints. And the entire book teaches you how to measure and look at lead indicators, which is important. And don't get caught up in the verbiage. It's literally just, okay, what am I trying to accomplish? Right? Like, what are the things that I need to do to get the lag indicators, the result? And so he helps you focus for 12 weeks for that particular one specific aspect. You take a break, which is very important in the 12-week year, and then you go again for another 12 weeks and do that again. And before you know it, you've made more progress on that particular problem or goal than ever before. And so, when we were going through this issue, the growth piece going into the execution, I just couldn't find a lot of like tangible books, right? There's a lot of books out there. And I think my buddy Jeremy Kubicek, who was on your podcast, also talked about like how he reads books where he goes to the third or fourth chapter. That's kind of give you the main point. And if you're fluffing me, like, I'm out. Like, you know what I mean? Within 3 to 4 minutes, I need to know if you're going to give me the solution. He was the one that gave me the solution. And I was like, this is it. This is exactly what I need. And so, very key piece here is you got to implement first. You got to do this first. So I did it. I started implementing this and I'm like, this is working. I took it then to my partners and those around us. And it's been one of the most instrumental tools and books on execution that I've ever read.
Yeah. Well, I'm adding that to my reading list because it's again, there's so much that everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, Leo, like that's because I'm a former athlete, and thankfully I had the right coaches, and then I've worked with some great leaders who have really instilled the like bring that large goal in and let's focus on today. Let's focus on this week. If you do this every single day, you're gonna look back in 3 months and be like, dang, I look what we just accomplished. And then in 6 months, in a year, um, and I like what you're talking about too, because when you take that little break, that the skill you took time to learn, all of a sudden that becomes easy. So it just becomes a part of the next process. And so you just keep stacking things. And because one of my big things, I look at guys like the Nick Sabans of the world or these
Yeah.
guys, and you're like, how do you manage and do everything? But what they've done is they've practiced little things for so long that those things are easy. What might be hard to me because I've never taken the time to do the process to learn that skill or to learn the way to think they do. I'm still learning how to do all that. But that's what these guys have done is just broken it down and focus on today, focus on this week. And then in a year, you're gonna look back and probably accomplish, a piece of what you're trying to get to. So I just love to hear you explain that and like break that down a little bit and let's not worry. Cause even 12 weeks, you're talking like quarters, weeks even sounds better. Let's not worry about the quarter. Let's worry about the week.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, what's freeing about this as well, and by the way, I'm a huge Hormozy fan, like, huge. Shout out to my
Glad I
buddy.
mentioned him. I was looking on LinkedIn. I saw one of his posts today and I was like, this guy hits every time.
100%. Like, I think he's incredible, right? But when it comes to execution, and he says it all the time, and I believe this, it's not sexy, okay? What's sexy is for you to, focus on marketing, focus on all the amazing things. But man, it's in that grit, it's in that hard work that you're doing, like, in small chunks. That's where the majority of the progress happens. Yeah, as long as you can just break it down into that sequence, it's an incredible, incredible way to create traction.
I think it's why I like him so much. He's just, like, so cut and dry. He's like, "Why are you overthinking this? Just
Yeah,
do this. Just do this. Like, everyone, stop thinking all this. Just do this. It's gonna
yeah,
it's you'll get so much further."
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna kinda lead into this, Leo, by asking about a few books that have been interesting to you, but I also wanted to ask you just, again, because of your background and what you do and the Forbes articles you wrote, the couple I was looking at, "The Overlooked Side of Wealth Management: Why Advisors Must Plan for Liabilities." Talk a little bit, and I'm gonna ask you about the other article too, but when specifically talking about liabilities, man, there's something real estate people, they're always like, "Buy, buy, buy. It's always great to buy." Like, but you want someone to consult you. Like, I want answers, which is what you're providing people. You're coaching people. You're giving all this information. Others just are like, "Let me sell you this house. Let me sell you this house." But you're talking and very strategically about how to think about different things in different scenarios and the must plan for liabilities. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I've never had anyone bring up liabilities as much in this space.
Yeah, a lot of people always say, like, when is the right time to buy a house? When is the right time to invest in real estate? And here's the short answer: when it makes sense for you. Okay. Like, if you're a renter or if you're, currently, living in a small house, right? And you start to see the walls kind of caving in around you, or if you're renting, you start to see like the rents going up, it might be a good indicator, but it needs to make sense for you. Okay. Now, when you get to that point, extremely important for you to surround yourself with people, okay, that are going to be advisors, okay, not just takers, okay. There's tons of those, okay. You'll find them. They're always talking about the same exact thing on social media, etc. But the advisors are going to give you the wisdom that you need in order to start that process. Okay, so there's a great proverb that says, "In the multitude of counsel, there's wisdom," right? So you need to have your counsel around you giving you that wisdom, okay, in terms of timing, etc. Now, once you buy a place, once you invest in real estate or any type of real estate in general, okay, you're going to notice pretty quick that you didn't just buy a pair of shoes, okay? You've invested in the largest liability on the actual balance sheet, okay? So that is an extremely, extremely overwhelming and I'll be honest, intimidating thing for a lot of consumers that are out there. Okay. Now, once you get over that, then obviously you start to do more transactions and start to invest in your portfolio. Things get a little bit more complex,
Yeah.
but that is the crux of what we do here in our practice. Like, we don't just want to finance and give you a liability, a mortgage. We want to help you manage this liability as long as you actually own the property. Now, most people in our industry partner with real estate agents. You'll see a lot of mortgage professionals have a ton of friends in the real estate space, and I think that's great. We've built a really amazing vertical with trusted real estate advisors, not just real estate agents that are kind of are aligning with us. But we've also built another vertical that we work directly with financial advisors, right? So they, in my opinion, are the quarterback to the actual wealth wheel, okay? Because they do see not just the real estate, but other asset class in there. And so in our space, what we talk about on a regular basis in partnership with these different sectors of our industry is how can we make sure that the mortgage itself, okay, is not an isolated item, but an integrated item inside of your overall financial picture. You see, most of our industry looks at your mortgage and says, okay, here's your payment, here's your rate, here's your cash to close. Okay, that's not the wisest way to do this. We have to look at this and say, okay, that's awesome, but how does this blend with my retirement plan? How does this blend with my overall tax strategy plan? How does it blend with, the business that I'm growing, right? Like, those questions need to be completely integrated. And so when we give advice, we literally give advice like a financial advisor would, right? I mean, they're certified to kind of talk about the entire aspect of the wealth wheel. But we give advice in light of what they obviously will see as it relates to the liability side of the balance sheet.
Yeah. Man, I love that because, like you said, it's a massive purchase and investment. I don't want somebody just being like, "Yeah, you can afford it." I want someone to be like, realistically, like, "Hey, Chris, you can afford it. Here's how it's going to affect this, this, and this, though, if you purchase this big of a house. Or let me steer you over here where this aligns better with your overall goals and what you're trying to get to within your overall portfolio." I love the advisory aspect that you're preaching about here because it's different. Again, there's so many people out there that are just, yeah, yeah, let me lend you money, let me lend you money. We're trying to grow. They don't advise you, and I want to hear someone give me the full, honest overview of what I need to be doing or what is best recommended for me in my current situation. Like I used to say, the best time to buy a home is when it makes sense for you. There's too many people that go like, dude, why are you still renting? Da, da, da. And you're just like, you're not me. You
Exactly.
don't know everything in my situation, and
Yeah.
so. Um, and it's frustrating. I love your approach of, "Hey, well, let's put it all on the table and let's figure out the best strategy and way to get to where you wanna go to." So, um, I can see where a lot of people would find that beneficial and wanna work with a team like yours, you know?
And I think though, like that should be a good principle in life though, right? Like I think one of the things that has been a huge blessing for me is be surrounded by a bunch of mentors. And let's be honest, people that I haven't necessarily met, right? Not just the Alex Hormozis of the world, the Brian Morans of the world, like the Brian Buffinis of the world. I mean, I can go on, like Dan and Chip Heath, the professors at Stanford that wrote a bunch of books that I love, right? Like that's what I'm talking about. Like you have to surround yourself with people that are feeding, like I tell my kids, right? And providing value to the most expensive piece of real estate, which is your brain. And so outside of real estate, if I were to kind of layer it back, I would say, look, before you do that, man, let's make sure that we're also investing up here, right?
Yeah.
If you're going
Mm,
to go invest in an asset, man, make sure that we invest in the best asset class that's out there, and that's your brain,
that's
right?
right.
Like, what are you reading? What are you consuming? What do you believe? What do you believe about the market? What do you believe about life in general? But yeah, I mean, advisors are super important, I would argue, in every
Yeah.
aspect of your life.
Yeah. Well, this will lead me to my last question for you, Leo, because you talk about finding advisors, and they don't have to be people you know. Um, Obviously, you're a big reader, and you take a lot of nuggets from different people and different books. But what are some books or authors who have had a big impact on you personally and professionally? And then I always ask this question too. If I were to ask you, hey, Leo, man, what are you reading? What's a good book that you would recommend for me? What's one of your favorites that you like to, recommend to other people?
Yeah, I mean, a great question. I mean, obviously, I come up from a faith background. I read my Bible every single day, so that's by far, the best book out there. But I knew you were going to probably ask this question, so I'm like, okay, what are some of the books that have been super impactful for me? So I have a few. The Power of Habits is one of them. Charles,
Amen to that. It's a great one.
this is an incredible book in terms of understanding habits. Reasonable Hospitality. This is an incredible read if you want to understand not just hospitality in general, but like understand, what matters to people as they're being served in every aspect of life. These books, I would say Dan and Chip Heath have been such an incredible resource for me. The Power of Moments is one of them. This one right here, there's a chapter on the highest rated hotel in California. You'll be surprised which one it is if you haven't read it already. It's not the Ritz Carlton. And then switch. Like, how do you change your mind? How do you actually approach change? The last one I picked up, and I have a ton, but 100x leader. I think you have this on your reading list as
Oh,
well.
yeah, yeah.
Um, you know, Jeremy Kubicek and Steve Cockram have been incredible resources for me, mentors of mine. In my journey, and then of course Hormozy stuff, Brian Moran stuff. The Gold Standard by Mike Krzyzewski has been an incredible read that I've
Yeah,
enjoyed, and so on. I could go on for
yeah,
hours on terms of all of the books, but those are some of the ones that stick out.
yeah. There's 2 that you just held up. I think it what was it? Unbelievable Hospitality,
Yeah,
and
Unreasonable
then
Hospitality.
The Power of Moments.
Yeah,
Both of the neither are books that I've read, but they've probably been recommended to me the most in the past few months, and so I just gotta get them. I gotta get them, and I gotta read them because people have given me little snippets about, like, some of the stories in there, and I know I would take a lot of lessons from those books, and so when you were holding those 2 up, I was like, "Somebody else is recommending that. I've gotta
yeah,
get that
yeah.
done."
I would start. I think Dan and Chip Heath are great, great writers. I would start with the Power of Moments, and then go to the Unreasonable Hospitality, because everybody knows about on Unreasonable Hospitality. Not a lot of people know about the Power of Moments. But yeah, though I would say those are absolutely reads, for the holiday season.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and I'll make sure. I think I've got some of those already on the Books for Guys website, but I'll get the rest of those put up because I'm trying to read them myself, and so love good book recommendations like that. But Leo, man, this has been such an energizing conversation, and I love conversations like this with people like yourself who are accomplishing incredible things, and you're preaching like, hey, yeah, I'm learning this though. Like I didn't just become here. Like I went through this, the financial crisis, and I took more nuggets, and I kept learning, and I kept reading, and I kept asking for help and guidance, and I just kept working, and now you're doing things that you probably, I don't know, maybe you never even thought of, that you'd be doing today. And so it's awesome to see people accomplishing amazing things like yourself. And now that you and I have met, I can't wait to continue following you and seeing what other articles you put in Forbes, and what you recommend book wise, and how big your company grows. And so, man, it's been an honor to have you on here. And I can't wait to look back one day and be like, I had Leo on the podcast and look what he's doing now. He's on Joe Rogan now.
Yeah, Chris, this was a real treat, and I'll leave you with this one quote by one of my favorite people. His name is Matt Chandler. He says, "It's okay to be where you are. It's just not okay for you to stay there," right? And I think, we have to continue to bet on ourselves. We have to continue to grow. And man, there's just so many great resources out there. Just go to the nearest bookstore and go online and find a resource of the problem that you're looking for. And bet you there's an authority there that can guide you in that process.
100%. 100%. Well, we appreciate it, Leo.
Thank you so much, brother.